This podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation, the industrial Internet of Things. It seems to be everywhere. We hear about it in all kinds of contexts. We know that it's an offshoot from Internet of Things, which gained popularity in the consumer media, trying to describe kind of like this Apple iPhone that I'm holding and shooting this video on. And it talks about, how many sensors are in an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever. And we could tell, mine measures how many steps I take, and you can measure all kinds of stuff, and location, and a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a thing, and we have it, and it's on the internet, so it's Internet of Things, and it got a lot of publicity. In the industrial arena, we've been talking about it for quite some time. So what is industrial Internet of Things? I started out writing about it quite a few years ago now, or several anyway. And what I really wanted to talk about was more like an ecosystem. It's not just sensors. It's not just sensors hooked up to the internet. Quite frankly, we've been doing that a long time, one way or another. Maybe not on the internet, but I remember discussing sensors hooked up maybe to directly to a cellular network, and we could send the data around the controller all the way to some other consumer that wanted the data, say an ERP system or an operations management system or something like that. So it was a way to get what I would call real data in real time, if we need it, into a database or an application where it can be used. And the idea is that with the proliferation of sensors, so we already know the whole story over the last 10, 15 years of cheaper silicon, faster processors, smaller footprint for RAM, and RAM gets to be so cheap, and we just put RAM everywhere. I don't know how many megabytes I'm wearing on me right now. It's amazing. So we have this capability. But when we refer to it in the industrial arena, we're not really talking about so much just that. It's really more of a strategy. It's how do I put together this system for the benefit of my manufacturing or industrial enterprise? So I have all sorts of data coming from all kinds of things, and almost everything has sensors. So even it could be a sensor like some instrumentation we have, a level, flow, pressure, that sort of stuff. Or we could even have it as part of a variable frequency drive, which tells us an awful lot about the status of things. In the feedback, how much current, it could tell us motor loads, it could tell us an early warning signal of motor problems potentially. All kinds of things could come out of being able to read that sort of data. So we have that, we have a number of things, but it's not just the data, and it's not just the database. We could send it to a historian, like a lot of people use OSI Pi, but there are other historians out there. I know GE has a historian, and there are others that I'll get yelled at for forgetting. But anyway, we have historians, and we send it to just a historian file. But databases are getting interesting. So we have new kinds of databases that are really cool. Hadoop is one, and there are newer ones that I don't really care to get into. But once again, what's the thing? It's the ability to take data from industry, from the process, from the unit, from the machine, from people, whatever, and send it directly to some application, bypassing control. Previously, everything had to go through control from the plant floor or the unit or the instrumentation to some other application, and that was slow, and any change meant that we had to go to the engineer to get into the controller. And any change, if you've been around for a while, and I've been around a while, any change in a controller could mean other changes in the whole control system, which screws up everything else. And if you're in a regulated industry where everything is certified, now you got even more problems. So the first benefit is I have sensors everywhere. They're all hooked up one way or another eventually to the internet. They go maybe into a cloud, they go into a server, they go into a database. But then the key is how do we use it, and we have all kinds of technologies for how we use it. The strategy part is we can talk about industrial Internet of Things, and so we have groups like the Industrial Internet Consortium that exists to help try to drive some standards and standard ways of doing things so that we can make the most out of the strategy of adopting Industrial Internet of Things. But we also have a strategy called Industry 4.0, and that's just another strategy, and it's similar to Internet of Things, except it also entails feedback and closed loops into the design process. So, it goes into PLM, product lifecycle management, and CAD, and it could carry forward into the control system. It could carry forward even further into the supply chain and that sort of thing. So they're both strategies, and so that's good. Now, why? So why becomes how do I operate better, more efficiently, more agilely? How do I make changes faster? How do I keep track of changes faster? How do I do all of that? And that is one of the key things. If I am a supplier, I'm going to use this as a strategy to see one of two things. And one thing would be I would use it as a strategy to see where I need to bolt on things. So I want to be an Internet of Things supplier. I do this. If I do this, does this make me an Internet of Things supplier? Personally, I don't recommend that if it's just one bolt-on, because I think you really should look at your overall core business and make sure that what you're doing fits in your core business. The other thing would be, am I fleshing out and solidifying my core business? How do I use this strategy to go beyond what and solidify my core? For example, let me take a look at Dell. I've been doing some work with Dell. I went to Dell World. I'm thinking, why would I go to Dell World? PCs are not 100% going away, but they're certainly not exciting anymore. And but what they did is they introduced an Internet of Things device, a gateway, if you will. And it's all their technologies and all their services and all the things they can do, put in a little box, and now I can use that in industry. It's industrially hardened for that sort of thing. Or then they went another step and they introduced in Germany only a few weeks ago, I forget how long now, maybe 3, some embedded PCs. Now they're getting into the embedded space. So they take all the technologies and all the services and all the support and the huge distribution network and say, okay, I'm going beyond PCs. I had PCs to servers. Now I'll do PCs down to embedded, down to a lower level. And so embedded plus Internet of Things gets to be very interesting. It looks like, okay, I have some core expertise. I have core products. I have core things going on. And what do I want to do? I want to flesh that out and solidify it so I don't lose my core, I strengthen my core. The only bolt-on I've seen so far that looks interesting is PTC. PTC is an ERP supplier, level 4 in the Purdue model and all that. But they also do PLM, and they also are kind of in two different kind of segments that fit together a little. But then they went out and bought ThingWorx. That's an Internet of Things technology play. But then they bought Exida, they bought Kepware, and I forget the fourth one they bought. So it wasn't just one bolt-on. Here's a whole strategy of going Internet of Things, and they bought 4 or 5 things, and they're putting them together. And they told me at a conference I was at a couple of weeks ago that the real strategy is now can I tie, because remember, Internet of Things can be a strategy all the way from the beginning of the product all the way through the supply chain. They have the beginning of the product in PLM, they have the supply chain in ERP, and now they have this Internet of Things that can feed data all kinds of ways. Becomes a very interesting play for them. We'll see how it works, but they went in whole hog. I mean, they spent way over what we all think is a reasonable value for Exida and for Kepware. So we'll see how that plays. And even in the big scheme of things, it wasn't all that much money. It was just a big multiple is all. So at any rate, another bigger player I might look at is SAP. They always tend to look to solidify from their ERP base to go out into maintenance and go out into other things, and an Internet of Things play for them. Now right now they partner with, say, Dell, and so it becomes interesting for them to partner with Dell in their new embedded Internet of Things space and then play with them. It'll be interesting to see where they go. So I would think of this whole discussion as I'm looking at it as a strategy. It's either a strategy for the owner, operator, or end user and how I can better manage my overall business, not just control and automation, but I think bigger than that, even as far as supply chain, because I have more data coming in, more and more powerful databases to store everything and be able to access it, and then actually better analytics and visibility into it all. So it all works together. And it's a great strategy for owner-operators or end users, as we say. And then the next thing is, what are other vendors doing, technology suppliers and developers, to exploit this? And then kind of watch, are they building their core? Are they strengthening their core and expanding it out beyond, say, control and automation, if that's where their play is, or beyond any of that other stuff, and see where that goes. So watch the strategies. Don't watch just the things. The things are interesting and it's cool, and the technologies are pretty cool, but a lot of them have already been developed. It's not so much a new technology, except here and there it gets to be interesting. But it's what strategy is that company using? Are they becoming a better company? Are they becoming more agile, more lean, more focused, more efficient? Most of all, more profitable. So at any rate, some thoughts on Industrial Internet of Things. This is Gary Minchell, and it's another Gary on Manufacturing podcast. And this one is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.